In the fog-draped streets of 1920s, London, a priceless diamond, the star of Mysore, vanishes from a glittering Bond Street shop, and its master jeweller, Henri Dubois, is found dead, a letter opener in his heart. Enter Hercule Poirot, the brilliant detective whose little grey cells unravel a web of greed and deception, a wealthy widow with a stained glove, a desperate partner with a hidden plan, and a phantom thief called the Magpie. Each holds a secret. As clues like red wax and synthetic hair weave a trail of lies, only Poirot can shine a light on the truth. Will the diamond's brilliance reveal a killer, or will the shadows of envy prevail? Chapter 1. The Glittering Prize. The November fog draped London's streets in a spectral veil, muffling the clatter of hansoms and the cries of newsboys. On a quiet corner of Bond Street, where wealth whispered in every polished window, stood the establishment of Monsieur Henri Dubois, jeweller extraordinaire. Its facade, adorned with gilt lettering, promised treasures within, and none shone brighter than the star of Mysore, a diamond of unparalleled brilliance, said to have adorned the crown of an Indian Maharaja before finding its way to this fog-bound city. Its facets caught the gaslight, casting prisms that danced like secrets across the velvet of its display. Hercule Poirot, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the damp, paused before the shop, his green eyes sharp beneath the brim of his Homburg hat. His moustache, a masterpiece of symmetry, quivered slightly as he inhaled the chill air. He had been summoned by a letter penned in Dubois' spidery hand, its tone urgent yet vague. A matter of life and death, it had read, concerning a gem of inestimable value. Poirot, never one to ignore a plea cloaked in such drama, had rearranged his morning to oblige. Inside, the shop was a sanctuary of opulence. The air carried the faint scent of rosewood polish and the metallic tang of wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over glass cases filled with sapphires that shimmered like twilight, emeralds that pulsed with verdant life, and rubies that smouldered with unspoken promises. At the heart of it all, behind a locked case of reinforced glass, rested the star of Mysore, its clarity so profound it seemed to hold the very light of eternity. Monsieur Dubois emerged from a back room, his slight frame almost lost in the grandeur of his surroundings. His face, lined with the cares of a man who trafficked in beauty, was pale, and his dark eyes darted like those of a hunted creature. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his French accent tinged with a tremor, "I am honored, yet I wish the circumstances were less dire." He extended a hand, cold and trembling, which Poirot clasped briefly, noting its clammy grip. "You wrote of a threat, Monsieur Dubois," Poirot said, his voice precise, each syllable polished as the gems around them. "Speak plainly, for Hercule Poirot does not deal in shadows." Dubois glanced at the star of Mysore, its radiance seeming to mock his agitation. "This diamond," he whispered, "it is my triumph and my curse. It draws envy as a flame draws moths. I have received intimations, notes, slipped under my door at night, warning me to part with it or face ruin. And there are those, clients, even those close to me, who watch it with hungry eyes." Poirot's gaze followed Dubois' to the diamond, but his mind was already cataloguing details. The nervous tick at the corner of Dubois' mouth, the faint smudge of ink on his cuff, the heavy drapes at the shop's rear that swayed slightly, as if disturbed by a draught or a presence. "You suspect someone specific, non?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle but probing. Dubois hesitated, his fingers twisting a gold chain at his waistcoat. "There is Madame Wentworth, a widow of great wealth, who covets the star for a necklace. She is insistent. Then there is my partner, Victor Leclerc, who believes the diamond a reckless investment, and rumours, whispers of a thief, they call him the magpie, who steals only the rarest gems." His voice broke. "I fear, Monsieur Poirot, that one of them means me harm." Poirot nodded, his little grey cells stirring. "And these notes, monsieur? You have them?" Dubois turned to a small safe behind the counter, his hands fumbling with the combination. Before he could open it, a piercing scream rent the air, sharp as a shard of glass. Poirot spun, his cane clicking on the polished floor, to see Dubois stagger, his eyes wide with shock. A letter-opener, its handle ornate with silver filigree, protruded from his chest. He collapsed, a crimson stain blooming on his waistcoat, and the silence that followed was deafening. Poirot knelt beside him, his fingers searching for a pulse that was not there. The star of Mysore's case stood empty, its glass door ajar. The diamond vanished, as if it had never been. Footsteps echoed outside, and a young errand boy burst in, his face ashen. "Monsieur Dubois!" he cried, then froze at the sight before him. "Calm yourself, mon petit," Poirot said, rising. "Fetch the police, and quickly." As the boy fled, Poirot's eyes swept the scene. The overturned chair, the scattered papers, the faint gleam of red wax on the safe's edge, like a drop of blood frozen in time. "The method, the motive, the moment," he murmured, "all are here, waiting to be understood." The fog outside thickened, as if conspiring to shroud the truth. But Hercule Poirot, his mind as clear as the missing diamond, knew that no shadow could hide from his little grey cells for long. Chapter 2. The Scene of the Crime. The fog outside Monsieur Henri Dubois' jeweller's shop on Bond Street seemed to press against the windows, as if eager to invade the scene of tragedy within. The air inside was heavy with the scent of rosewood polish and the metallic tang of blood, a grim counterpoint to the opulence that had defined the establishment mere moments ago. Hercule Poirot stood motionless, his green eyes scanning the chaos with the precision of a watchmaker. The body of Dubois lay crumpled on the polished oak floor, the silver-handled letter-opener protruding from his chest like an accusation. The star of Mysore, that radiant diamond which had been the shop's crowning glory, was gone, its empty case a silent witness to the crime. Captain Arthur Hastings, summoned by a breathless errand boy, pushed through the shop's door, his face flushed from the chill and the urgency of his dash across London. His eyes widened at the sight of Dubois' body, and he stifled a gasp. "Good Lord, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "What's happened here? Murder?" Poirot, his Homburg hat still perched impeccably on his head, turned to his friend with a slight nod. "Oui, mon ami, murder most deliberate. Observe the scene, if you please, but touch nothing." His cane tapped the floor gently, a rhythmic counterpoint to his thoughts. "The method is clear, but the motive, that is a puzzle we must unravel." The shop, so orderly when Poirot had entered minutes earlier, was now a tableau of disorder. Papers from Dubois' desk lay scattered like fallen leaves. A crystal inkwell had spilled its contents across a ledger, and a single chair lay overturned, its velvet cushion askew. The glass case that had housed the Star of Mysore stood ajar, its lock intact but unfastened, suggesting no force had been used. Poirot's gaze lingered on the safe behind the counter, its door slightly open, revealing a velvet-lined interior, empty of its most precious charge. A smudge of red wax, vivid against the safe's steel surface, caught his eye, and he bent closer, his moustache twitching as he inhaled its faint, waxy scent. Hastings, ever eager to assist, hovered near the body, his military bearing at odds with the unease in his eyes. "Poor chap," he murmured, "stabbed with his own letter-opener by the look of it. But who, Poirot? And why take the diamond?" Poirot did not answer immediately. He knelt beside Dubois, his gloved fingers hovering over the letter-opener without touching it. The blade, he noted, was buried to its hilt, the wound precise, suggesting a single forceful blow. Dubois' face, frozen in a rictus of surprise, bore no signs of a struggle. No scratches, no bruises. His right hand, however, clutched a single strand of dark hair, so fine it might have been overlooked. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Hastings, regardez, this hair. It is not natural, I think. Too uniform, too perfect. A wig, perhaps?" Before Hastings could respond, the door swung open with a jangle of bells, admitting Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard. His broad face was flushed, his overcoat damp from the fog. Behind him came 2 constables and a dour-faced coroner, Dr. Willis, whose satchel clinked with the tools of his trade. "Poirot!" Japp exclaimed, his tone a mix of exasperation and relief. "I might have known you'd be here, poking your nose into trouble. What's the story, then?" The boy said murder and theft. "Precisely, Inspector," Poirot replied, rising with a grace that belied the grimness of the scene. "Monsieur Dubois has been killed, stabbed with a letter-opener, and the star of Mysore, a diamond of great value, has vanished from its case. The crime occurred moments ago, just as I was speaking with him." Japp's eyebrows rose. "You were here, and you didn't see the blighter." He shook his head, muttering, "Trust you to be in the thick of it." He turned to his men, barking orders to secure the premises and question passers-by. The constables fanned out, their boots heavy on the floor, while Dr. Willis knelt beside the body, his fingers probing with clinical detachment. Poirot, undeterred by Japp's bustle, continued his examination. He moved to the glass case, noting its lock, a complex mechanism requiring a key, yet unforced. "Curieux," he murmured. "The thief had access, or the case was left unlocked, a carelessness most unlike Monsieur Dubois." He turned to the safe, where the red wax smudge glowed like a ruby in the dim light. "And this wax, Inspector. It is not common sealing wax, no? Its hue is distinctive, its texture fine. A jeweller's wax, perhaps, used for securing parcels of gems." Japp, peering over Poirot's shoulder, grunted. "Could be nothing, Poirot. A smudge from a letter, maybe." But his tone lacked conviction, and he jotted a note to have the wax analyzed. "Anything else catch your eye?" Poirot's gaze swept the room, cataloguing details with the precision of a ledger. The heavy drapes at the rear of the shop, separating the showroom from a private office, hung unevenly, as if disturbed. A faint scuff mark on the floor near the counter suggested a hurried movement, and a single pearl button, small and lustrous, lay half-hidden beneath a rug. Poirot retrieved it with a handkerchief, holding it to the light. A button, perhaps from a glove or a coat. It is not from Monsieur Dubois' attire. Hastings, hovering nearby, frowned. A woman's button, perhaps. That widow Dubois mentioned, Madame Wentworth. She's the sort to wear pearls, isn't she? Poirot's lips curved slightly. "You leap to conclusions, mon ami, but your instinct is not without merit. We shall see." He slipped the button into an envelope, handing it to Japp, with a murmured request for care. The coroner rose, brushing his knees. "Death was instantaneous," Dr. Willis said, his voice flat. "Single stab wound to the heart, clean and deep. The killer knew what they were doing. No hesitation. Time of death, well, you were here, Poirot, so I'd say within the last quarter hour." Japp nodded, his pencil scratching in his notebook. "Right then. Suspects. Dubois mentioned anyone to you, Poirot?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with the light of memory. "Oui, Inspector. He spoke of 3. Madame Clara Wentworth, a wealthy client with a passion for the star of Mysore. Monsieur Victor Leclerc, his business partner, who disapproved of the diamond's purchase, and a thief known as the Magpie, a figure of rumour in London's underworld, notorious for stealing rare gems. Each, I am told, was seen near the shop this morning." Japp's eyebrows shot up. A fine trio, that. A society widow, a disgruntled partner, and a phantom thief. Any of them could have done it. He turned to a constable. "Get me names, addresses, and alibis for Wentworth and Leclerc. This Magpie'll be trickier, but I'll put word out to the informants." Poirot, meanwhile, had moved to the rear drapes, parting them to reveal a small office cluttered with ledgers, jewellers' tools, and a half-finished cup of tea, its surface clouded with cold. A narrow door led to an alley, its lock unbolted. "Voilà," Poirot said softly. "An exit, or perhaps an entrance. The killer may have fled this way, unseen by the street." Hastings peered into the alley, where the fog swallowed all but the nearest cobblestones. "Dashed convenient for a quick getaway," he said. "But why leave the door unbolted? Sloppy work, if you ask me." "Or deliberate," Poirot countered, his voice thoughtful. "To suggest haste where there was none. The mind of the criminal, Hastings, is a labyrinth. We must follow its twists with care." Japp, joining them, examined the door. "No signs of forced entry," he noted. "Either they had a key, or it was left open. Dubois wasn't the careless type, was he?" "Non," Poirot said firmly. "He was meticulous, a man of order. This door, this case, this wax. They tell a story, but not the one the killer wishes us to read." The constables returned with initial reports. A flower seller across the street had seen Madame Wentworth's carriage near the shop at 9 that morning, though she could not confirm the lady's presence. A newsboy recalled Monsieur Leclerc arguing loudly with Dubois through the shop's window an hour earlier, his face red with anger. The Magpie, predictably, was a ghost. No sightings, only whispers. Japp scratched his head. "This is a right mess, Poirot. A diamond worth a king's ransom, a dead jeweller, and 3 suspects with more motive than sense." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A mess, perhaps, but one with pattern, Inspector. The wax, the hair, the button. These are threads in a tapestry. We must weave them together." He turned to Hastings, his tone brisk. "Come, mon ami. While the police pursue their inquiries, we shall pay a visit to Madame Wentworth. Her tears, I suspect, may hide more than grief." As they stepped into the fog, Poirot's mind was already at work, sifting through the clues like a jeweller inspecting facets. The red wax, he mused, was no ordinary sealing wax. It was too vibrant, too specialized. A jeweller's wax, Dubois had said, used for securing parcels of gems. The synthetic hair suggested a disguise, a deliberate attempt to mislead. And the pearl button, small, elegant, out of place in a shop of such precision, hinted at a presence not yet accounted for. The star of Mysore, he knew, was more than a prize. It was a catalyst, drawing out the greed, envy, and desperation of those who coveted it. The bells of a nearby church tolled 11, their notes muffled by the fog. Poirot adjusted his scarf, his expression serene but resolute. "The truth, Hastings," he said, "is like a diamond. It lies hidden, but its brilliance cannot be concealed forever. We shall find it, and the hand that struck Monsieur Dubois." Hastings, striding beside him, felt a familiar thrill. With Poirot's little grey cells at work, no murderer could hide for long, not even in the labyrinth of London's fog-bound streets. Chapter 3. The Widow's Tale. The fog that cloaked London seemed to part reluctantly as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings stepped from their cab onto the polished flagstones of Mayfair. The residence of Madame Clara Wentworth loomed before them, a Georgian townhouse of pale stone, its windows glinting like watchful eyes. The air was sharp with the promise of rain, and Poirot, ever fastidious, adjusted his overcoat to shield his immaculate suit from the damp. His cane clicked rhythmically on the pavement as they ascended the steps, where a liveried footman admitted them with a bow. The drawing-room into which they were ushered was a study in restrained opulence. Silk drapes of deep burgundy framed tall windows, and a fire crackled in a marble hearth, casting shadows across a Persian rug. Madame Wentworth rose from a velvet settee, her figure statuesque, her mourning black gown accentuating the pallor of her skin. Her emerald eyes, framed by lashes that seemed too heavy for tears, met Poirot's with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. A lace handkerchief fluttered in her hand, a prop as much as a necessity. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low and musical, "and Captain Hastings. I am honoured, though I confess I am at a loss as to why you are here." She gestured to a pair of arm-chairs, her movements graceful but deliberate, as if every gesture were rehearsed. Poirot inclined his head, settling into the chair with the precision of a man who valued order above all. "Madame Wentworth, we come on a matter most grave, the murder of Monsieur Henri Dubois and the theft of the Star of Mysore. You were, I understand, a client of his, non?" Her eyes widened, and the handkerchief rose to her lips, though Poirot noted the absence of tears. "Murder?" she whispered. "Henri, dead, and the diamond gone. Oh, it is too dreadful." She sank back onto the settee, her posture one of practiced distress. Hastings, seated beside Poirot, leaned forward, his honest face creased with sympathy. "It's a terrible shock, madame. We're trying to piece together what happened. Dubois mentioned you as someone with a particular interest in the Star of Mysore." Madame Wentworth's gaze flickered, but her composure held. "Yes, I commissioned a necklace with the diamond as its centerpiece. Henri was a genius. His designs were unparalleled. I visited him yesterday to discuss the piece, but I assure you, I left him quite alive." Her fingers tightened on the handkerchief, and Poirot's sharp eyes caught a faint red stain on the fingertip of her glove, barely visible against the black silk. "Madame," Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing, "you speak of your visit yesterday. At what hour, if I may ask, and what was the nature of your discussion?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the fire. "It was late afternoon, perhaps 5 o'clock. We spoke of the necklace's design. Nothing more. I left shortly after, as I had a charity luncheon to attend today." Her voice was steady, but Poirot noted the slight tremor in her hand as she smoothed her gown. "A luncheon," Poirot repeated, his moustache twitching. "And this morning, madame. A witness places your carriage near Dubois' shop at 9. Were you there? Her cheeks flushed, a delicate rose against her pale skin. My carriage? Oh yes, I sent my driver to collect a parcel from a nearby modiste. I was not there myself, Monsieur Poirot. I was at the luncheon, as I said, with dozens of witnesses. Lady Ashbourne, Mrs. Carrington, the vicar of St. Mary's. They will confirm it. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Most convenient, madame, and yet I am curious about a small detail. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her glove. You handle sealing wax often, do you not? A red wax, perhaps, of a particular hue? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Madame Wentworth's lips parted, and for a moment her composure faltered. Sealing wax? Why, no, I may have used some for a letter, but it is hardly unusual. Surely you do not think— She broke off, her eyes narrowing. What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot? Poirot raised a placating hand. I imply nothing, madame. I observe. A smudge of red wax was found at the scene of the crime, a wax not unlike that used by jewellers, and your glove, it bears a similar mark. A coincidence, perhaps? She drew herself up, her emerald eyes flashing. A coincidence indeed. I am a widow, Monsieur Poirot, not a murderer. I loved Henri's work, and I mourn his loss. If you seek a culprit, look to those with true motive. His partner, perhaps, or that thief they call the magpie. Hastings shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. We're only trying to get to the truth, Madame Wentworth, he said. Anything you can tell us about Dubois or the diamond might help. Her gaze softened, but only slightly. Henri was brilliant, but stubborn. He refused to sell the Star of Mysore, though I offered a fortune for it. He said it was his legacy, a piece of history. As for his partner, Victor Leclerc, they quarrelled often, over money, over the shop's direction. Henri told me Leclerc thought the diamond a reckless purchase, a drain on their finances. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And the magpie, madame? You know of this thief? She shrugged, a delicate motion. Only rumours. London is full of such tales, thieves who strike like shadows. Henri feared him, I think. He mentioned notes, threats slipped under his door at night. Poirot rose, his movements precise. You have been most helpful, madame. We shall not detain you further. He paused at the door, turning back. One last thing. Your gloves? They are new, no? Yet one bears a stain. Curious, is it not? Her lips tightened, but she said nothing, her silence louder than words. As Poirot and Hastings stepped back into the fog, the footman closed the door with a soft click, sealing the widow's secrets within. In the cab, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. She's hiding something, isn't she? That stain on her glove. It's too much like the wax at the shop. Poirot nodded, his fingers steepled. Oui, mon ami. But what does she hide? Grief, guilt, or merely embarrassment? Her alibi is strong, yet her presence lingers in the shadows of this crime. The wax, the carriage, these are not accidents. We must learn more of this luncheon and her movements. Hastings frowned. And Leclerc. She pointed to him rather quickly, didn't she? Trying to deflect suspicion. Perhaps, Poirot said, his voice thoughtful. Or perhaps she speaks the truth. Leclerc, the partner, has much to gain with Dubois gone and the diamond sold. We shall visit him next, but first I must consult with Inspector Japp. The wax, the hair, the button. These clues whisper of a plan, Hastings, a plan most cunning. As the cab rattled through the fog-bound streets, Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. Madame Wentworth's elegance masked a guarded heart, and her words, though polished, rang with the faint discord of evasion. The star of Mysore, he knew, was more than a gem. It was a magnet for desire, drawing out the darkest impulses of those who coveted it. The truth, he resolved, would sparkle as brightly as the diamond itself, once his little grey cells had polished away the lies. Chapter 4. The Partner's Ambition. The fog that clung to London's streets had thickened by the time Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings alighted from their cab at a narrow lane off Cheapside, where Victor Leclerc's office resided. Unlike the glittering opulence of Dubois' Bond Street shop, this building was a study in utilitarian gloom, its brick facade streaked with soot and its windows small and begrimed. A brass plaque, barely legible in the dim gaslight, announced Leclerc and Dubois, jewel brokers, though the partnership's discord seemed etched into the very walls. Poirot's cane tapped a brisk rhythm as he ascended the creaking stairs, his green eyes alert beneath the brim of his Homburg hat. "Hardly the place for a man dealing in diamonds, eh, Poirot?" Hastings remarked, his breath visible in the chill air as they entered a cramped office. The room was a chaos of ledgers, cigar stubs, and half-empty teacups, the air thick with the acrid scent of tobacco. A single gas lamp cast harsh shadows, illuminating shelves cluttered with jewelers' tools and parcels sealed with red wax, its hue strikingly familiar. Victor Leclerc stood behind a scarred oak desk, a burly man with a florid complexion and a nervous tic that twitched his left eye. His suit, though tailored, was rumpled, and his tie hung askew, as if he had dressed in haste. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice gruff with a faint Breton accent. "I heard about Henri. A terrible business. And the star of Mysore. Stolen, they say." His hands, broad and calloused, fidgeted with a pen, betraying a restlessness that Poirot noted with interest. "Oui, Monsieur Leclerc," Poirot replied, settling into a chair that groaned under his precise weight. "A tragedy, both for the man and the gem. You were his partner, non? Perhaps you can shed light on this dark affair." Leclerc's tic intensified, and he sank into his own chair, the wood creaking ominously. "I'll tell you what I told the police," he said, his tone defensive. "Henri was a fool. Brilliant, but a fool. That diamond was a ruinous purchase, worth more than our shop could bear. We argued about it, yes, but I didn't kill him." Hastings, standing near a shelf, raised an eyebrow. "Argued, you say? A witness saw you shouting at Dubois this morning, outside his shop. Sounded like more than a disagreement." Leclerc's face reddened further, and he slammed a fist on the desk, scattering papers. "Yes, we quarrelled. Henri was bleeding the business dry. Lavish dinners, new fixtures that cursed diamond. I told him we needed to sell it, that we had a buyer, a collector from Amsterdam, ready to pay a fortune. But Henri wouldn't hear of it, called it his legacy, his art." He snorted, his contempt palpable. "Art doesn't pay debts." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "This buyer, Monsieur Leclerc, who is he? And when did you last see Monsieur Dubois?" Leclerc hesitated, his tic betraying his unease. "The buyer's name is Vandermeer, a private collector. I met him through a broker last month. As for Henri, I saw him this morning, around 8. We argued, as I said, but I left him alive. I was at the bank by 9, discussing a loan to keep us afloat. The manager, Mr. Grayson, can confirm it." Poirot's gaze drifted to the desk, where a stick of red sealing wax lay beside a brass seal engraved with the initials VL. The wax matched the smudge found at Dubois' shop, vivid, almost crimson, with a sheen peculiar to jewelers' blends. "This wax, monsieur." "Poirot," said, gesturing to it. "It is most distinctive. You use it often, I presume, for securing parcels?" Leclerc's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "Yes, for shipments. It's a special blend. Henri insisted on it for our high-value clients. What of it?" Poirot did not answer directly. Instead, he rose and paced the room, his cane tapping a slow, deliberate rhythm. His eyes caught a small detail on a shelf. A receipt, half buried under a ledger from a theatrical supplier. It listed a purchase of 1 brunette wig, synthetic, medium length. Poirot's moustache twitched. "You have an interest in disguises, Monsieur Leclerc?" he asked, his tone deceptively mild as he held up the receipt. Leclerc's face drained of colour, his tick now a rapid flutter. "That? It's nothing. A gift for my niece, for a school play." "What are you getting at, Poirot?" "Merely observing," Poirot said, his voice smooth as silk. "A wig, a wax seal, a heated quarrel, all threads in a tapestry yet to be woven. Tell me, monsieur, did you ever receive notes as Monsieur Dubois did? Threats, perhaps, concerning the star of Mysore?" Leclerc's jaw tightened. "No notes. Henri mentioned them, but I thought he was a paranoid. He was always dramatic, saw enemies everywhere. That thief, the magpie, was his latest obsession. Kept saying he'd strike, but I told him it was nonsense." Hastings, unable to resist, interjected, "Nonsense, was it? A man's dead. Leclerc, and the diamonds gone. Sounds like the magpie might have been real enough." Leclerc's eyes flashed with anger. "If it was the magpie, good luck catching him. He's a ghost, they say, slips through shadows. But don't look at me, Captain. I wanted the diamond sold, not stolen. With Henri gone, I'm left with a sinking business and no gem to save it." Poirot's gaze lingered on Leclerc, noting the sweat beading on his brow, despite the chill. "A sinking business," he repeated softly. "And yet, with the star of Mysore sold to this Vandermeer, you would be free of debt, non? A powerful motive, perhaps, for a man of ambition." Leclerc stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "I've had enough of your insinuations, Poirot. I didn't kill Henri, and I don't have the diamond. If you want answers, chase that thief or pester Madame Wentworth. She was always hovering around Henry, batting her eyes for that stone." Poirot rose, his expression serene, but his eyes sharp. "We shall pursue all avenues, Monsieur Leclerc. Your candour is appreciated, if not entirely convincing." He paused at the door, turning back. "One last question. Your bank meeting? It was at 9, you say. Yet the bank is but a short walk from Dubois' shop. Curious, is it not, that you could not be more precise?" Leclerc's tick flared, but he said nothing, his silence a wall Poirot could not yet breach. As they descended the stairs into the fog, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "He's nervous as a cat, Poirot. That wig receipt, the wax, it's too neat, don't you think? He's hiding something." Poirot nodded, his cane tapping the pavement. "Oui, mon ami. But what? Leclerc is a man of ambition, yes, but also of desperation. His business teeters, his partner is dead, and the diamond is gone. Is he a murderer, or merely a man caught in a web not of his making? The wax, the wig, these are clues, but they point in many directions." The cab rattled through the fog, its wheels muffled on the cobblestones. Poirot's mind churned, sifting through the morning's discoveries. Leclerc's quarrel with Dubois, the receipt for a wig matching the synthetic hair found at the scene, the red wax that linked both shop and office, these were pieces of a puzzle. But the picture remained elusive. Madame Wentworth's guarded elegance, Leclerc's blustering denial, and the spectral figure of the magpie formed a triangle of suspicion, each point sharp with possibility. "We must verify this bank alibi," Poirot said, his voice thoughtful. "And this Vandermeer, the mysterious buyer, his role in this affair intrigues me. But first, Hastings, we shall seek the shadow of the magpie. A thief who leaves no trace is either a myth or a genius, and Hercule Poirot does not believe in myths." As the cab turned toward Whitechapel, where rumours of the magpie's haunts whispered through the underworld, Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The star of Mysore, he knew, was not merely a gem, but a beacon, drawing greed and deceit into its orbit. The truth, like the diamond's facets, would reveal itself only under the right light, and Poirot was determined to cast it. Chapter 5. The Magpie's Shadow. The fog that smothered London had grown denser as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings ventured into the labyrinthine alleys of Whitechapel, where gaslights flickered like wary sentinels. The cab had deposited them at the edge of this shadowed quarter, where the air carried the tang of coal smoke and the faint, sour reek of gin. Poirot's patent leather shoes, polished to a mirror sheen, seemed an affront to the grimy cobbles, yet he navigated the uneven streets with his usual fastidious grace, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Hastings, his face set with a soldier's resolve, kept pace, though his eyes darted to the dark doorways and muffled sounds of the East End. Their destination was the Black Raven, a pub nestled in a crooked lane, its sign depicting a bird as sinister as its name. Inspector Japp had provided the lead, gleaned from a network of informants who trafficked in whispers of London's underworld. "The magpie's been mentioned here," Japp had said, his tone skeptical. "If there's truth to this thief, you'll find a trace in that den of rogues." Poirot, ever intrigued by the elusive, had resolved to pursue this phantom, whose reputation for stealing rare gems made him a prime suspect in the theft of the Star of Mysore. The Black Raven's interior was a haze of tobacco smoke and raucous laughter, the air thick with the clink of glasses and the low murmur of deals struck in shadowed corners. Rough-hewn tables bore the scars of countless nights, and the bar, manned by a burly publican with a scar across one cheek, gleamed with the patina of spilled ale. Poirot, his Homburg hat tilted at a precise angle, drew curious glances as he and Hastings entered, an incongruous pair amid the pub's rough clientele. "Stay close, mon ami," Poirot murmured to Hastings, his green eyes scanning the room. "In such places, the truth hides behind a mask of bravado." He approached the bar, where a barmaid with sharp eyes and a cascade of auburn curls wiped a glass with practiced indifference. Her apron was stained, but her gaze was keen, missing nothing. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, his voice smooth as polished oak, "I seek information about a certain bird, one they call the magpie." The barmaid's lips twitched, a flicker of amusement or caution. "The magpie, is it?" she said, her Cockney accent sharp. "You're a long way from Mayfair, Governor. What's a gent like you want with a ghost?" Poirot's moustache quivered slightly. "A ghost who steals diamonds, perhaps. A jeweller, Monsieur Henri Dubois, lies dead, and a gem of great value, the Star of Mysore, is missing. You have heard of this, non?" Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Heard plenty. Last night, a stranger was in here, boasting he'd nabbed a prize that'd make him king of the thieves. Didn't give no name, but he had a look, sly, like he knew more than he said. Dropped this, though. She reached beneath the bar and produced a matchbook, its cover embossed with the crest of a gambling den known as the Gilded Cage, a haunt for those with more money than morals. Poirot took the matchbook, his gloved fingers handling it as if it were a rare gem. "This stranger," he said. "Describe him, if you please." The barmaid shrugged. Dark coat, hood up, kept to the shadows. Spoke low, like he didn't want to be heard proper. Left before midnight, after a row with some bloke over cards. She paused, then added, "There was a woman, too, earlier. High class, in a veil. Asked about the magpie. Same as you. Didn't stay long." Hastings, hovering at Poirot's shoulder, frowned. "A woman? Could it have been Madame Wentworth, Poirot? She's been awfully curious about this thief." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Perhaps, mon ami, or perhaps another player in this game. Merci, mademoiselle, for your candour." He slipped a coin across the bar, which vanished into her apron with a practised flick. They left the Black Raven, the matchbook a small weight in Poirot's pocket. The fog outside seemed to pulse with secrets, and Poirot's mind was already weaving the barmaid's words into the tapestry of the case. The Gilded Cage, he knew, was a den where wealth and vice intertwined, a place where a thief like the magpie might indeed be known. But the veiled woman intrigued him, a shadow within a shadow, her presence suggesting layers of deception yet to be uncovered. Their next stop was the Gilded Cage itself, a short cab ride to a street where gaslights burned brighter and the air carried the scent of perfume rather than coal. The gambling den's facade was gaudy, its doors guarded by a hulking man whose eyes assessed Poirot and Hastings with cold calculation. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and the clatter of dice, the tables crowded with men in evening dress and women whose jewels glittered with borrowed light. A velvet curtain at the far end hinted at private rooms where higher stakes were played. Poirot approached the manager, a sleek man named Mr. Carver, whose smile was as sharp as a blade. "The magpie?" Carver said, his tone dripping with amusement. "A legend, Monsieur Poirot. A tale to scare jewelers and thrill the gossip sheets. No one's seen him, if he even exists." But his eyes flicked to the curtain, and Poirot noted the gesture. "Legends, Monsieur Carver, often have a grain of truth," Poirot replied. "A man was seen here, boasting of a glittering prize, and a woman, veiled, seeking the same shadow. You know of them, perhaps?" Carver's smile faltered. "People talk, monsieur. They come and go. I don't keep tabs on every drunk or dame with a question." But as Poirot turned to leave, Carver added, "Check the back rooms. Sometimes information lingers." Behind the velvet curtain, the private rooms were quieter, the air heavy with the scent of wax and brandy. Poirot's sharp eyes caught a glint in the fold of the curtain, a single dark hair, synthetic, identical to the one found clutched in Dubois' hand. He retrieved it with a handkerchief, his expression unreadable. "Another thread, Hastings," he murmured. "The magpie, or someone who wishes us to believe in him, has been here." Hastings, peering into the dimness, spotted a discarded betting slip on the floor, marked with the initials VL. "Leclerc, perhaps," he whispered. "Could he be mixed up with this place?" Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Or someone wishes us to think so. The initials, the hair, these are breadcrumbs, mon ami, leading us deeper into the labyrinth. But whose hand scatters them?" They found no further traces in the Gilded Cage, only rumors that swirled like the fog outside. tales of a thief who struck without sound, whose face was never seen. As they stepped back into the night, Poirot's mind churned. The barmaid stranger, the veiled woman, the synthetic hair, the matchbook. These were fragments of a puzzle, each glinting with possibility. The magpie, whether real or a convenient fiction, was a spectre that loomed over the murder of Dubois and the theft of the Star of Mysore. In the cab, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "This magpie's a slippery one, Poirot. If he's real, he's clever enough to leave no trace, except that hair, and even that feels staged. Could Leclerc be posing as him, to cover his tracks?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "A possibility, mon ami, but not the only one. The hair, the wax, the initials, these are deliberate, meant to mislead or to point. Madame Wentworth, Leclerc, the magpie, each plays a role, but the script is not yet clear. We must tread carefully, for the truth is a shadow that shifts with the light." As the cab rattled toward Baker Street, where Poirot intended to consult his notes, the fog seemed to tighten its grip on London, a silent accomplice to the crime. The Star of Mysore, Poirot knew, was more than a stolen gem. It was a key to unlocking the desires and deceptions of those who had fallen under its spell. His little grey cells hummed with purpose, ready to chase the shadow of the magpie until it resolved into flesh or faded into myth. Chapter 6. The puzzle takes shape. The fog that had haunted London's streets all day seemed to retreat slightly as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned to Poirot's flat at Whitehaven Mansions. The sitting room, a haven of order and symmetry, offered a stark contrast to the chaotic undercurrents of Whitechapel. Polished mahogany gleamed under the soft glow of electric lamps, and the air carried the faint scent of lavender from Poirot's meticulously arranged toiletries. A fire crackled in the grate, casting a warm light over the room's precise furnishings, a far cry from the grime of the Black Raven or the gaudy excess of the gilded cage. Poirot, his Homburg hat and cane, placed with care on a side table, settled into an armchair, his green eyes bright with the fervour of a mind at work. Hastings, less at ease, paced before the fire, his hands clasped behind his back. "This case is a devil of a tangle, Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. Madame Wentworth with her stained glove, Leclerc with his wig and wax, and now this magpie, a thief who might not even exist. How do you make sense of it? Poirot's moustache twitched as he steepled his fingers, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "The sense, mon ami, lies in the details, the threads that connect the chaos. Consider the facts. A jeweller, Monsieur Dubois, is murdered with a single precise blow. The Star of Mysore, a diamond of immense value, is stolen from an unlocked case. A smudge of red wax, a synthetic hair, a pearl button. These are not accidents, Hastings. They are the brushstrokes of a careful artist, painting a picture to deceive." He rose, his movements fluid, and crossed to a small writing desk where he had laid out his notes, written in his meticulous hand. From his pocket he produced the matchbook from the Black Raven and the synthetic hair from the gilded cage, placing them beside the envelope containing the pearl button from Dubois' shop. "These," he said, "are our clues, each a whisper of the truth." "But whispers can lie, non?" Hastings joined him, peering at the objects. "That hair, it's the same as the one Dubois was clutching, isn't it? Someone's trying to make us think the magpie did it. But why leave such obvious clues? It's almost too neat." "Précisément," Poirot said, his voice low. The hair is synthetic, a deliberate plant, I suspect. The magpie, if he exists, is a master of stealth. Yet here we have a hair, a matchbook, a trail leading us to his supposed haunts. It is as if someone wishes us to chase a shadow while the real culprit slips away. He tapped the matchbook, its gilded cage crest glinting in the lamplight. This suggests our thief, or someone posing as him, was reckless enough to boast in a pub. Yet the magpie's legend speaks of silence, of invisibility. And the veiled woman at the Black Raven, who is she? Madame Wentworth, perhaps, seeking to confirm the thief's existence, or another player we have yet to meet. Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. And Leclerc's wig receipt, could he be the magpie? He had motive, Poirot. Dubois was sinking their business, and that diamond could have saved him. Maybe he staged it to look like a theft. Poirot nodded, but his expression was cautious. A possibility, mon ami, but Leclerc's bluster hides a man of calculation. Would he leave a receipt so easily found? And the wax, used by both Dubois and Leclerc for their trade, links them, but also Madame Wentworth with her stained glove. We must not rush to judgment. A knock at the door interrupted them, and Poirot's landlady, Mrs. Hudson, ushered in Inspector Japp, his overcoat damp from the fog. His broad face was etched with fatigue, but his eyes sparked with news. "Poirot, you've got a knack for stirring up hornets' nests," he said, tossing his hat onto a chair. "I've got something for you, those clues you were so keen on." Poirot gestured to a seat, his demeanour serene. "Enlighten us, Inspector. What have your inquiries revealed?" Japp pulled out his notebook, flipping through pages scribbled with his untidy scrawl. First, the wax. The lab boys say it's a rare blend, used by high-end jewellers for sealing gem parcels. Not something you'd find in a stationer's shop. Dubois used it, Leclerc too, and maybe others in the trade. But it's not common. That smudge on the safe? Fresh, applied within hours of the murder. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And the hair? Synthetic, as you thought, Japp said. From a wig, high quality, but not bespoke. You can buy them at theatrical suppliers, like the one Leclerc's receipt came from. But here's the kicker. We found a trace of the same wax on the hair from Dubois' hand. Whoever planted it was handling that wax, maybe sealing something. Hastings let out a low whistle. That ties it to the shop, and to Leclerc or Dubois, or someone who had access to their supplies. Japp nodded. As for the pearl button, it's from a woman's glove. Fine craftsmanship, likely custom-made. Could be Madame Wentworth's, but we'll need to check her wardrobe. Her alibi holds, by the way. Dozens at that charity luncheon swear she was there from 8 till noon. Leclerc's bank meeting is shakier. The manager, Grayson, says he was there, but couldn't pin the time closer than 8:30 to 10. Plenty of time to slip to Bond Street and back. Poirot's fingers drummed lightly on the desk. And the magpie? Any trace in Whitechapel? Japp snorted. Like chasing smoke. The Black Raven's regulars clammed up. But that matchbook you got. The Gilded Cage is known for fencing stolen goods. No one's seen a diamond like the star, but a few lowlifes mentioned a stranger asking about big scores last week. Could be our man, or a decoy. Poirot leaned back, his gaze distant. A decoy, oui. The hair, the wax, the matchbook. These are theatrical props, staged to distract. The magpie may be real, or he may be a mask for another's crime. Madame Wentworth's alibi is strong, yet her glove betrays her. Leclerc's ambition is clear, yet his clumsiness in leaving clues is suspect. We must dig deeper, Inspector. Japp sighed, rubbing his temples. You're making this complicated, Poirot. I say Leclerc's our man. Motive, opportunity, and that wig receipt. But I'll keep after the magpie. Got men watching the gilded cage and checking fences for the diamond. Poirot rose, his expression resolute. Bon, I shall revisit Madame Wentworth to probe her alibi and her glove. And you, Hastings, will accompany me to the bank to speak with this Monsieur Grayson. The timing of Leclerc's visit is critical. As for the magpie, we shall let him flutter in the shadows a while longer. As Japp departed, grumbling about Poirot's penchant for riddles, Hastings turned to his friend. You really think it's a setup, don't you? Someone's playing us like a fiddle. Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. A violin, perhaps, mon ami, played with skill. But Hercule Poirot isn't so easily led. The puzzle takes shape, and soon the pieces will fall into place. The star of Mysore shines not only in its beauty, but in the desires it awakens. We shall find it, and the hand that struck Dubois, by following the light of truth. The fire crackled, and outside the fog seemed to pulse with secrets. Poirot's little grey cells, as relentless as the tides, churned through the clues, weaving a pattern that grew clearer with each passing moment. The truth, he knew, was near, waiting only for the right question to bring it into focus. Chapter 7. A hidden motive. The morning sun struggled to pierce the persistent London fog as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings once again approached the elegant Mayfair townhouse of Madame Clara Wentworth. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of coal fires and wet leaves, and Poirot's polished shoes clicked purposefully on the pavement, his cane a steady metronome. His green eyes, sharp beneath the brim of his Homburg hat, betrayed a mind already dissecting the threads of the case. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, adjusted his scarf against the chill, his expression a mix of anticipation and unease. Back to Madame Wentworth, eh, Poirot? Hastings said, his breath visible in the cold. She was cagey last time. Do you think she's more involved than she let on? Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mental gears turning. Madame Wentworth, mon ami, is a woman of layers, like a pearl within an oyster. Her alibi is strong, her grief convincing, yet the red wax on her glove speaks of secrets. We must peel back those layers to find the truth. The footman admitted them with the same deferential bow, and they were ushered into the same burgundy-draped drawing-room, where the fire crackled with a warmth that did little to dispel the tension. Madame Wentworth stood by a window, her silhouette framed against the fog-diffused light, her black morning gown accentuating her statuesque grace. Her emerald eyes flickered with surprise as she turned, though her composure quickly reasserted itself. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, her voice smooth but guarded. I did not expect a second visit so soon. Have you news of poor Henri's killer? She gestured to the velvet settee, but Poirot remained standing, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that belied his courteous smile. News, madame? Not yet, but questions, always questions, Poirot replied, his tone deceptively light. We seek clarity, and you, as one close to Monsieur Dubois, may provide it. Your visit to his shop yesterday, at 5 o'clock, you said it was to discuss a necklace. Yet, I wonder, was there more to this meeting? Her fingers tightened briefly on the lace handkerchief she held, a gesture Poirot noted. More? I told you, monsieur. We spoke of the necklace. The star of Mysore was to be its centerpiece. Henri was passionate about his design. but we disagreed on the cost. He was obstinate. Her voice faltered, and she looked away, toward the fire. Hastings, seated now, leaned forward. A disagreement heated enough to keep you there late, perhaps, or to prompt another visit this morning, when your carriage was seen near the shop. Madame Wentworth's eyes flashed, but her tone remained controlled. I explained that, Captain. My driver was at a modiste's nearby, collecting a parcel. I was at my luncheon by 8, as Lady Ashbourne and others will confirm. I had no cause to return to Henri's shop, and certainly no reason to harm him. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the Persian rug. And yet, Madame, there is the matter of your glove. He paused, his eyes locking onto hers. A stain of red wax, identical to that, found at the scene of the crime. A wax used by jewelers, not common in a lady's drawing room. You said it was from a candle, but I find this unconvincing. Perhaps you handled something sealed with such wax. A parcel, a letter, delivered by Monsieur Dubois? Her cheeks flushed, a delicate rose against her pale skin, and for a moment her composure wavered. You are persistent, Monsieur Poirot. Very well. I admit I handled a parcel from Henri the night before his death. He sent me a sample setting for the necklace, sealed with his usual wax. I opened it, and some wax may have stained my glove. It is no great mystery. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A parcel, Madame? Most interesting. And where is this parcel now? She hesitated, her fingers twisting the handkerchief. I discarded it. The setting was not to my liking, and I had no need to keep it. I told Henri as much during our discussion. Hastings frowned, sensing a crack in her story. Discarded it? Rather careless for a lady so particular about her possessions, don't you think? Her lips tightened, but she met his gaze steadily. I am particular, Captain, but not sentimental. The setting was flawed, and I saw no reason to keep it. If you doubt me, search my home. I have nothing to hide. Poirot raised a placating hand, his voice soothing yet incisive. We do not doubt your sincerity, Madame, but we seek precision. This parcel, describe it, if you please, its size, its contents, the seal. Madame Wentworth's eyes darted to the fire, then back to Poirot. It was small, no larger than a book wrapped in brown paper. The contents were a brass setting with a false stone, a mock-up for the necklace. The seal was red, with Henri's initials, H.D. That is all I recall. Poirot nodded, though his expression suggested he was far from satisfied. And this disagreement with Monsieur Dubois, was it merely about cost, or was there another matter? A personal one, perhaps? Her gaze hardened, and she drew herself up, her voice cold. Personal? Henri was my jeweler, nothing more. If you seek scandal, look elsewhere. Perhaps to his partner, Victor Leclerc, whose greed was no secret. Or that thief, the magpie, who Henri feared. I am no murderer, Monsieur Poirot. Nor am I a thief. Poirot inclined his head, his courtesy unshaken. I accuse no one, Madame, but I observe. The wax, the parcel, your presence near the shop, these are pieces of a puzzle. We shall trouble you no further. For now. He turned to leave, then paused, his eyes catching a small detail on the mantel, a silver candlestick, its base clean of any wax. One last thing, Madame. Your candle, the one that stained your glove. It leaves no trace here, none? Her lips parted, but no words came. Poirot's smile was faint, but knowing as he led Hastings back into the fog. In the cab, Hastings could contain himself no longer. She's lying, Poirot. That story about the parcel, it's too convenient, and that candle business doesn't hold water. No wax on the candlestick, but wax on her glove. She's in this up to her neck. Poirot's fingers drummed lightly on his cane. Perhaps, mon ami. But lies are like shadows. They reveal as much as they conceal. The parcel, if it exists, may hold a clue, but her hesitation suggests fear, not guilt. She protects something, or someone. We must verify this luncheon alibi with Lady Ashbourne, and we must find this discarded parcel, if it was truly discarded. The cab rattled toward Baker Street, where Poirot intended to cross-reference his notes with Inspector Japp's latest findings. His mind churned, weaving the threads of the case. Madame Wentworth's stained glove, her evasive answers, the mysterious parcel sealed with jeweller's wax, Leclerc's ambition and the synthetic hair pointed to a possible disguise, while the magpie remained a spectre, his presence felt but unproven. The star of Mysore, Poirot knew, was the key, a beacon that drew greed and deceit into its orbit. As they reached the flat, a boy delivered a message from Japp. The bank manager, Grayson, had clarified Leclerc's alibi, placing him at the bank from 9 to 10, but with a gap unaccounted for between 8 and 9, time enough to reach Bond Street and return. The wax on the hair, Japp added, was a perfect match for that used by Dubois and Leclerc, narrowing the circle of suspects. Poirot settled into his armchair, his eyes half closed but his mind ablaze. "The puzzle takes shape, Hastings," he murmured. "Madame Wentworth hides a motive, Leclerc a plan, and the magpie a mask. The truth lies not in one, but in the interplay of all three. We shall find it, mon ami, by shining the light of reason on these shadows." The fire crackled, and outside the fog seemed to whisper of secrets yet to be unveiled. Poirot's little grey cells, relentless as ever, sifted through the clues, each one a step closer to the heart of the mystery. Chapter 8. The Partner's Secret. The fog that had blanketed London for days seemed to thin slightly as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings made their way back to the gritty confines of Cheapside, where Victor Leclerc's office stood in stark contrast to the elegance of Mayfair. The narrow lane, lined with soot-stained buildings, carried the faint clatter of typewriters and the hum of commerce, a world removed from the glittering opulence of Dubois' shop. Poirot's polished shoes navigated the uneven pavement with care, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm, while his green eyes, sharp beneath the brim of his Homburg hat, missed nothing. Hastings, his face set with determination, kept pace, though his thoughts were still tangled in Madame Wentworth's evasive answers. "This Leclerc chap's got a lot to answer for, Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low as they climbed the creaking stairs to the jeweller's office. "That wig receipt, the wax, his row with Dubois, it's all piling up against him. Do you think he's our man?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "Monsieur Leclerc is a man of ambition, mon ami. But ambition can blind as well as drive. The clues point to him, oui, but they are too convenient, too neatly arranged. We must probe deeper to uncover what he hides." The office door was ajar, and a faint scent of cigar smoke greeted them as they entered. The room was as chaotic as before, its shelves cluttered with ledgers, jewelers' tools, and parcels sealed with the distinctive red wax that had become a recurring thread in the case. Victor Leclerc stood at his desk, his burly frame hunched over a ledger, his florid face marked by a nervous tic that seemed more pronounced in the dim light of the single gas lamp. He looked up, his eyes narrowing at the sight of Poirot and Hastings, and his hand paused mid-entry, ink dripping from his pen. "Monsieur Poirot, back again?" Leclerc's voice was gruff, tinged with irritation. "I've told you everything. What more do you want? I'm trying to keep this business from collapsing now that Henri's gone." Poirot settled into a chair, his movements precise, his gaze fixed on Leclerc with an intensity that belied his courteous tone. "Everything, Monsieur Leclerc." "No, I think not. There are secrets in this affair, and you, as Monsieur Dubois' partner, are at its heart. Let us speak of your business, which you say teeters on ruin. The star of Mysore, was it not your salvation?" Leclerc's tick flared, and he slammed the ledger shut, the sound sharp in the cramped room. "Salvation? That diamond was a curse. Henri sank our capital into it, tens of thousands, more than we could afford. I told him to sell it, that we had a buyer in Amsterdam, Van der Meer, ready to pay enough to clear our debts and more. But Henri wouldn't hear of it. Called it his masterpiece, his legacy." He snorted, his contempt raw. "Legacy doesn't pay creditors." Hastings, standing near a shelf, folded his arms. "You argued about it that morning, didn't you? Loudly, in full view of Bond Street. Sounds like you were desperate enough to do more than argue." Leclerc's face reddened, and he leaned forward, his fists clenched. "I didn't kill him, Captain, if that's what you're driving at. Yes, we fought. I told him we were ruined unless he sold the diamond. He laughed in my face, said he'd rather die than part with it. Well, he got his wish, didn't he? But it wasn't my hand that did it." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he leaned forward, his voice soft but incisive. "Perhaps not, monsieur, but let us consider the facts. Your business is failing, your partner is dead, and the diamond is gone. You had motive, opportunity, and, most curious, a wig, purchased from a theatrical supplier, matching the synthetic hair found in Monsieur Dubois' hand. A disguise, perhaps, to pose as this magpie?" Leclerc's tick became a rapid flutter, and he stood abruptly, knocking a pile of papers to the floor. "That wig again! I told you it was for my niece's school play. A trifling thing. You're building castles out of air, Poirot. If I wanted the diamond, why would I steal it? I had a buyer lined up, legal and above board." Poirot rose, pacing slowly, his cane tapping the floorboards. "A buyer, oui, Monsieur Van der Meer. Tell me more of him. How did you come to know him? And why, if your deal was so legitimate, did you not share his details with Monsieur Dubois?" Leclerc hesitated, his eyes darting to the window, where the fog pressed like a silent witness. "Van der Meer contacted me through a broker, a man named Kessler, about a month ago. He's a private collector, rich as Croesus, with a taste for rare gems. He saw the star of Mysore in a trade journal and made an offer, double what we paid. I tried to convince Henri, but he wouldn't budge. Said the diamond was worth more than money, that it was art." His voice dripped with disdain. Poirot paused by the desk, his gaze falling on a small brass seal engraved with VL beside a stick of red wax identical to that found at the crime scene. "And this wax, monsieur," he said, gesturing to it, "it is the same as that used by Monsieur Dubois. None? A smudge was found on his safe, and another trace on the synthetic hair. You use it for your parcels, as he did. Curious, is it not, that it appears in so many places?" Leclerc's hands trembled, but his voice was defiant. "It's jeweller's wax, Poirot, standard in our trade. Henri used it. I use it. Half the jewelers in London use it. You're chasing shadows." "Shadows, perhaps," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "But shadows cast by a light. Let us speak of your alibi. You were at the bank from 9 to 10, yet there is a gap between 8, when you argued with Dubois, and 9. Bond Street is but a short walk from your bank. Time enough, perhaps, to act on your desperation." Leclerc's face darkened, and he gripped the edge of the desk. "I told you. I was at the bank. Grayson will confirm it. I didn't go back to Henry's shop. If you want a killer, look to that magpie, or Madame Wentworth, with her endless demands for that diamond. She was obsessed with it, always pestering Henry." Hastings, unable to resist, interjected, "Obsessed enough to kill, you think? Or are you just pointing fingers to save your own skin?" Leclerc's tick flared again, but he held Poirot's gaze. "I'm no saint, Captain, but I'm no murderer. Henri's death leaves me with nothing but debts and a shop I can't run alone. If I'd stolen the diamond, I'd be halfway to Amsterdam by now, not stuck here answering your questions." Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile, though his eyes remained sharp. "A point well made, monsieur. But the truth is not always so straightforward. Your ambition, your buyer, your wig, these are threads in a tapestry, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall weave them into clarity." He paused, picking up a ledger from the desk, its pages marked with frantic calculations. "Your books, they show a business in peril. How close to ruin were you, Monsieur Leclerc?" Leclerc sank back into his chair, his defiance crumbling. "Close enough," he muttered. "Creditors breathing down my neck, suppliers refusing credit. The Star was our last chance, but Henri wouldn't see reason. I begged him to sell, but he was blind to everything but his art." Poirot closed the ledger with a soft snap. "Blindness, monsieur, is a trait shared by many in this affair. We shall leave you now, but rest assured, we shall meet again." He turned to the door, then paused, his voice soft but cutting. "One last thing. Your niece, the one for whom you bought the wig. What is her name, and what play required such a prop?" Leclerc's eyes widened, and for a moment he seemed at a loss. "Her name? Marie. The play. Some school nonsense I don't recall. Why does it matter?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Everything matters, monsieur. Bonsoir." As they descended the stairs, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "He's lying about that wig, isn't he? No niece, no play, just a cover for something darker." Poirot nodded, his cane tapping the pavement as they stepped into the fog. "Oui, mon ami. The wig, the wax, the gap in his alibi. These are not accidents. Leclerc's ambition is a fire that consumes reason, but whether it led to murder, we must yet determine. We shall visit this Monsieur Grayson at the bank to confirm the timing, and we must learn more of this Van der Meer. A buyer so eager, yet so shadowy, intrigues me." The cab rattled through the streets, the fog a silent conspirator. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the clues. Leclerc's desperation, the wig receipt, the red wax linking shop and office. Madame Wentworth's evasions and the magpie's elusive shadow formed a complex web, each strand vibrating with possibility. The Star of Mysore, he knew, was more than a gem. It was a catalyst, drawing out the darkest desires of those who coveted it. The truth, like a diamond's facet, awaited only the right angle of light to reveal its brilliance. Chapter 9. The Magpie's Lair. The fog that had clung to London like a conspirator's cloak had begun to lift, revealing a city bathed in the pale light of a late November afternoon. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings, undeterred by the chill, set out for a derelict warehouse in Wapping, a lead provided by one of Inspector Japp's informants. The tip, whispered in a smoky Whitechapel tavern, suggested the warehouse was a haunt of the elusive Magpie, the thief whose shadow loomed over the murder of Henri Dubois and the theft of the Star of Mysore. Poirot's polished shoes, an anomaly in the muddy lanes of the East End, stepped carefully over puddles, his cane tapping a resolute rhythm. Hastings, his face set with a soldier's alertness, scanned the narrow alleys, where the air carried the tang of the Thames and the faint clatter of dockside cranes. "This magpie's a slippery devil, Poirot," Hastings said, his breath visible in the cold. "If he's real, why leave clues like that hare and matchbook? It's as if he wants us to chase him." Poirot's green eyes gleamed beneath the brim of his Homburg hat. "Précisément, mon ami. The clues are too deliberate, too theatrical. The magpie, if he exists, is either a fool or a genius, and I suspect the latter. This warehouse may reveal whether he is flesh or fiction." The warehouse loomed ahead, a crumbling relic of brick and rusted iron, its windows boarded and its doors sagging on their hinges. The faint creak of timber and the drip of water echoed in the stillness, lending the place an air of desolation. Japp, who had joined them with a pair of constables, stood at the entrance, his overcoat damp from the river mist. His broad face was etched with skepticism, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of hope. "Got this tip from a fence who owes me a favour," Japp said, his voice low. "Says the magpie uses this place to stash his takings. Could be a wild goose chase, Poirot, but it's worth a look." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the warehouse's facade. "A goose, perhaps, but one that may lay a golden egg. Let us proceed with caution, Inspector. The magpie's lair, if it is such, will hold secrets, but also traps." The interior was a cavern of shadows, lit only by slivers of light piercing the boarded windows. The air was thick with the musty scent of damp wood and oil, and the floor crunched underfoot with grit and broken glass. Crates and barrels, some splintered, others sealed, were stacked haphazardly, their surfaces coated with dust. Poirot, his handkerchief pressed lightly to his nose, moved with the precision of a cat, his eyes scanning every corner. Hastings and the constables fanned out, their footsteps echoing, while Japp kept close, his hand on his truncheon. "Here, Poirot," Hastings called softly, pointing to a crate in a shadowed alcove. Its lid was ajar, revealing a glint of metal within. Lockpicks, a glass cutter, and a coil of fine rope, the tools of a thief's trade. Beside them lay a wig, brunette and synthetic, its strands identical to those found at Dubois' shop and the gilded cage. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers lifting the wig with care. "Voilà," he murmured, "another thread in our tapestry. This wig confirms the magpie's presence, or the illusion of it. But observe, Hastings, the dust on this crate is undisturbed, save for the lid. These tools have been placed recently, perhaps to be found." Japp, peering over Poirot's shoulder, grunted. "Staged, you think? Someone's leading us by the nose." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice thoughtful. His eyes caught a faint gleam on the crate's edge, a smudge of red wax, vivid and unmistakable, matching the jeweller's blend found at the crime scene. He scraped a sample into an envelope, his moustache twitching. "This wax, Inspector, is no coincidence. It links the warehouse to Dubois' shop, to Leclerc's office, and to Madame Wentworth's glove. The magpie, or his creator, is weaving a web most intricate. Hastings, exploring further, called out from a corner, "Poirot, look at this!" He held up a small brass key, its surface etched with the initials H.D., Henri Dubois. Could this be for the shop's case, the one holding the Star of Mysore? Poirot's eyes narrowed as he examined the key. Possible, mon ami, but curious. The case was unlocked, not forced. If this key fits, why leave it here? Another breadcrumb, perhaps, to lure us deeper into the labyrinth. He slipped the key into his pocket, his mind racing. The constables, meanwhile, pried open another crate, revealing a collection of costume jewellery, paste gems and gilded trinkets, none approaching the value of the Star of Mysore. But one item caught Poirot's eye. A sealed parcel, wrapped in brown paper and bearing a red wax seal with the initials V.L.M., Victor Leclerc. Inside, a brass setting held a false diamond, its facets dull compared to the star's brilliance. "This," Poirot said, holding the parcel, "is what Madame Wentworth described, a sample setting sent by Dubois. Yet it bears Leclerc's seal. Why would he send it, and why leave it here?" Japp scratched his head. "Looks like Leclerc's trying to pin this on the magpie. Plant his tools, his seal, make it look like a thief's hideout. But why not take the real diamond and run?" Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. "A question most pertinent, Inspector. If Leclerc is our killer, he has hidden the star elsewhere, or he is not the mastermind we seek. This lair, with its wigs and wax, is a stage, and we are its audience. But who directs the play?" They searched further, finding no trace of the Star of Mysore, but a faint scuff mark on the floor led to a trapdoor, half hidden beneath a pile of sacks. Japp's men pried it open, revealing a ladder descending into a damp cellar. The air below was cold, the walls slick with moisture, and a single lantern hung from a beam, casting eerie shadows. A table held a scattering of papers, sketches of jewellery, maps of Bond Street, and a note in a hurried scrawl. "Meet at the cage. Midnight. Bring the prize." The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the paper bore a faint trace of the same red wax. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The gilded cage again," he murmured. "This note suggests a rendezvous, perhaps with a buyer, or a deception. The magpie, or his puppet, is close, yet always one step ahead." Hastings, peering at the sketches, frowned. "These look like Dubois's designs. Could the magpie have been working with him, or stealing his plans?" "Or neither," Poirot said, his voice low. "These are props, mon ami, meant to convince us of the magpie's reality. But the wax, the key, the seal, these point to those we know. Leclerc, with his ambition, Madame Wentworth, with her secrets. The magpie may be a mask for one of them, or another we have yet to name." As they emerged from the cellar, Japp's men sealed the warehouse, stationing a constable to watch for any return. In the cab back to Baker Street, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "This is a devil of a setup, Poirot. That key, the wig, the wax, it's all too perfect. Someone's playing us for fools." Poirot nodded, his fingers drumming on his cane. "Oui, Hastings, but a fool is only he who accepts the illusion. The magpie's lair is a theatre, its props carefully chosen. Leclerc's seal, the key with Dubois' initials, these are meant to distract, but they also betray. We must return to Leclerc, and we must find this Vandermeer, the buyer who waits in the shadows. The Star of Mysore is near, mon ami, and with it, the truth." The cab rattled through the clearing fog, the city's lights now sharp against the dusk. Poirot's little grey cells churned, weaving the clues into a pattern, the wax linking shop, office, and warehouse, the synthetic hair pointing to a disguise, the key and seal suggesting a deeper connection between Leclerc and the crime. The magpie, whether real or a fiction, was a spectre that danced at the edge of the mystery, but Poirot was determined to unmask the hand that pulled its strings. Chapter 10. The web tightens. The fog that had shrouded London for days had at last begun to dissipate, leaving the city bathed in a pale, wintry light as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned to the scene of the crime, Monsieur Henri Dubois' opulent shop on Bond Street. The air was sharp with the bite of November, and the street bustled with the clatter of carriages and the murmur of passers-by, oblivious to the tragedy that had unfolded within the shop's gilded walls. Poirot, his Homburg hat tilted at a precise angle, paused before the entrance, his green eyes scanning the facade as if it might whisper its secrets. His cane tapped a steady rhythm, a counterpoint to the restless energy of his little grey cells. Hastings, at his side, adjusted his scarf against the chill. "Back to where it all began, eh, Poirot?" he said, his voice tinged with anticipation. "Are you sure about this? Gathering the suspects here. It's a bold move." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Bold, perhaps, mon ami, but necessary. The threads of this mystery, the wax, the hair, the key, the seal, converge here, in this shop. To unravel the web, we must draw its weavers together." Inside, the shop was a silent monument to the crime. The glass case that had once held the Star of Mysore stood empty, its velvet lining a mute testament to the theft. The polished oak floor still bore faint traces of the chaos, a scuff mark near the counter, a smear of ink from the spilled well. The heavy drapes at the rear hung motionless, their secrets locked in their folds. Inspector Japp, already present, had arranged for the suspects to be summoned, and his constables stood watchfully by the door, their presence a quiet assurance of order. Madame Clara Wentworth arrived first, her black morning gown a stark contrast to the shop's glittering displays. Her emerald eyes flickered with unease as she surveyed the room, her lace handkerchief clutched tightly in one gloved hand. Victor Leclerc followed, his burly frame filling the doorway, his florid face marked by the nervous tic that seemed to pulse with his agitation. The magpie, of course, remained a shadow, his absence a palpable presence in the room. Japp, leaning against the counter, gave Poirot a nod, his expression a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Monsieur Poirot," Madame Wentworth said, her voice cool but strained, "this is a grim setting for a meeting. Why have you brought us here?" Leclerc, his tic flaring, added gruffly, "Yes, what's this about?" "I've got a business to save, and standing in Henri's shop isn't helping." Poirot raised a hand, his demeanour calm but commanding. "Patience, madame, monsieur. We are here to seek the truth, and the truth, like a diamond, requires the right light to reveal its facets." He began to pace, his cane tapping the floor, his voice clear and deliberate. "Monsieur Dubois was murdered here, with a single precise blow from a letter opener. The Star of Mysore, a gem of unparalleled value, was taken from this case. But the crime was not one of a passion or chance. It was a plan, meticulously crafted." He paused before the empty case, his eyes sweeping the room. "Let us consider the clues. A smudge of red wax, a jeweller's blend, was found on the safe, on a synthetic hair in Dubois' hand, and in a warehouse said to be the magpie's lair. A pearl button from a lady's glove lay beneath a rug. A key, marked with Monsieur Dubois' initials, was found in that same warehouse, beside a parcel sealed with Monsieur Leclerc's initials, and a wig, matching the hair, was purchased by Monsieur Leclerc, or so his receipt claims. Madame Wentworth's lips tightened, but she remained silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. Leclerc shifted uncomfortably, his tic betraying his nerves. Japp, watching closely, raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a lot of pointing fingers, Poirot. Get to the meat of it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The meat, Inspector, is motive. Madame Wentworth, you desired the star of Mysore for its beauty, to crown your necklace. You visited Dubois the night before his death, and your glove bears the stain of his wax. Yet your alibi is strong. Dozens confirm your presence at a luncheon. Monsieur Leclerc, you saw the diamond as salvation for a failing business, and your quarrel with Dubois was witnessed. Your alibi is less certain, and the wig receipt raises questions. The magpie, a thief of legend, leaves clues too convenient. A hair, a matchbook, a key. But who benefits most from this crime?" He turned to Madame Wentworth, his voice soft but piercing. "Madame, you spoke of a parcel from Dubois, a sample setting. Yet it was found in the magpie's lair, sealed with Monsieur Leclerc's wax. Why would your parcel bear his mark?" Her eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "I told you I discarded it. Perhaps someone found it, used it to mislead. I had no part in Henri's death." Poirot nodded, then faced Leclerc. "And you, monsieur? Your ambition is clear. Your buyer in Amsterdam a tempting solution. Yet the wig, the wax, the key, all point to you. Did you pose as the magpie, to take the diamond and rid yourself of a partner who stood in your way?" Leclerc's face reddened, his fists clenching. "I've said it before, Poirot. I didn't kill Henri. Yes, I wanted the diamond sold, but I didn't steal it. That wig was for my niece, and the wax is common in our trade. You're twisting facts to trap me." Poirot's smile was faint, but unwavering. "Facts do not twist, monsieur. They align. The magpie's lair, with its tools and clues, is a stage, its props placed to distract. But the star of Mysore was not stolen for its beauty or its thrill. It was taken to silence a man and secure a fortune. The murderer needed both Dubois's death and the diamond's disappearance." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering on the empty case. "The wax links you both, yet only one had the opportunity to strike. Madame Wentworth, your luncheon ties you to Mayfair, but your carriage was near the shop. Monsieur Leclerc, your bank visit leaves a gap, time enough to act. The magpie? A shadow, perhaps, or a mask for one of you." Japp stepped forward, his patience thinning. "Come on, Poirot, who's it going to be? You've got us all on edge here." Poirot raised a hand, his voice steady. "The web tightens, Inspector, but it is not yet complete. The truth lies in the interplay of motives, greed, desire, desperation. We must confirm one final detail, the movements of Monsieur Leclerc's buyer, this Vandermeer, and Madame Wentworth's parcel, where it was discarded, and by whom it was found." He turned to the suspects, his eyes piercing. "You are free to go. But know this, Hercule Poirot sees through the shadows. The star of Mysore will shine again, and with it, the truth." As Madame Wentworth and Leclerc departed, their faces masks of unease, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "You're letting them go? Leclerc's practically got the diamond in his pocket, and Madame Wentworth's story about that parcel doesn't add up." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Patience, mon ami. The spider does not strike until the fly is caught. We have tightened the web. Now we wait for the final thread to snap. To the air. Bank, Hastings, and then to Amsterdam's shadows. The truth is close, and it will not escape. The shop's bells jangled as they stepped into the street, the city's pulse quickening with the promise of revelation. Poirot's mind, as sharp as the star's facets, wove the clues together. The wax, the wig, the key, the motives. The magpie's shadow loomed, but Poirot knew that shadows were cast by light, and he was determined to find its source. Chapter 11. The truth unveiled. The pale light of a November afternoon filtered through the windows of Henri Dubois' Bond Street shop, casting long shadows across the polished oak floor. The air within was heavy with the scent of rosewood polish and the lingering echo of a tragedy, as if the very walls mourned their master's fate. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the showroom, his Homburg hat removed and placed with precision on a nearby table, his cane resting against it. His green eyes, sharp as ever, surveyed the scene with a quiet intensity, while his moustache quivered faintly, betraying the fervor of his little grey cells. Captain Hastings stood by the counter, his honest face creased with anticipation, while Inspector Japp, flanked by two constables, leaned against the wall, his broad features set in a mix of impatience and trust in Poirot's methods. The suspects had been summoned once more. Madame Clara Wentworth, her black morning gown a stark contrast to the glittering cases around her, and Victor Leclerc, his burly frame tense, his nervous tic more pronounced than ever. The empty case that had once held the Star of Mysore stood as a silent accusation, its velvet lining a void where brilliance had once shone. The magpie, that elusive spectre, remained absent, his presence felt only in the clues scattered like deliberate breadcrumbs. "Monsieur Poirot," Madame Wentworth said, her emerald eyes guarded, her lace handkerchief clutched tightly. "This theatrics grows tiresome. Have you called us here to accuse, or merely to prolong our distress?" Leclerc, his voice gruff, added, "Aye, get on with it, Poirot. I've creditors hounding me, and standing here won't bring Henri back or find that diamond." Poirot raised a hand, his demeanor serene, but commanding, his voice clear as a bell in the hushed shop. "Patience, madame, monsieur. Hercule Poirot does not indulge in theatrics, but in truth. The murder of Monsieur Dubois and the theft of the Star of Mysore are no mere crimes of passion. They are a symphony, played with precision, its notes composed of greed, deception, and desperation. Today, we shall hear its final chord." He began to pace, his cane tapping the floor in a slow, deliberate rhythm, his eyes sweeping the room. "Let us reconstruct the crime. Monsieur Dubois, a jeweler of genius, is stabbed with his own letter-opener, a single precise blow to the heart. The Star of Mysore, a diamond of unparalleled value, is taken from an unlocked case. A smudge of red, wax, a synthetic hair, a pearl button, a key, a parcel sealed with Monsieur Leclerc's initials. These are the notes of our symphony, each placed with care to mislead." He turned to Madame Wentworth, his gaze piercing. "Madame, you desired the star for its beauty, to crown your necklace. You visited Dubois the night before his death, arguing over its cost. Your glove bore a stain of red wax, a jeweler's blend, and you spoke of a parcel. A sample setting, you claimed, discarded after you deemed it unworthy. Yet this parcel was found in a warehouse, sealed with Monsieur Leclerc's mark. Why, madame, would your parcel bear his seal?" Her lips parted, but her voice was steady. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot. I discarded it. Someone must have found it, used it to confuse matters. I was at my luncheon when Henri died. Dozens will swear to it." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable, and turned to Leclerc. "And you, Monsieur Leclerc, saw the star as salvation for a failing business. You quarrelled with Dubois that morning, witnessed by many. Your alibi, a bank meeting, leaves a gap, time enough to slip to Bond Street and act. A wig, matching the hair in Dubois' hand, was purchased by you. The wax, your seal, the key found in the warehouse. All point to you. Did you don the magpie's mask to rid yourself of a partner who refused to sell?" Leclerc's tic flared, his fists clenching. "I've said it a dozen times, Poirot. I didn't kill Henri. Yes, I wanted the diamond sold to Vandermeer, but I didn't steal it. That wig was for my niece, and the wax is standard. You're weaving a noose out of nothing." Japp, stepping forward, crossed his arms. "Come now, Poirot. You've got us all hanging on. You said the web's tightened. Who's caught in it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, and he stopped pacing, standing before the empty case. "The web, Inspector, is woven by one who understood Dubois' heart and his business. The magpie, this thief of legend, is a fiction, a mask created to conceal the true hand. The clues, the hair, the key, the warehouse, are props staged to distract. But the wax, the seal, the timing, these betray the truth." He turned to Leclerc, his voice sharp as a blade. "Monsieur Leclerc, you planned to sell the Star of Mysore, to save your business. When Dubois refused, you saw no other way. You struck him with the letter opener, a weapon of opportunity, but with a precision born of intent. You took the diamond, not to keep, but to deliver to your buyer, Vandermeer. The wig, purchased weeks ago, was your disguise, planted to suggest the magpie's hand. The wax on the hair, your seal on the parcel. These were your errors, for they link you to the crime." Leclerc's face drained of colour, his tic a frantic pulse. "You're mad, Poirot. I was at the bank. Grayson confirmed it. I didn't—" Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Your bank visit, monsieur, was from 9 to 10. But your quarrel with Dubois was at 8. Bond Street is a short walk, and you knew the shop's routines. You unlocked the case, took the diamond, and left the key in the warehouse to mislead. The parcel, meant for Madame Wentworth, was resealed with your wax and placed in the magpie's lair to complete the illusion. But you underestimated Hercule Poirot." Madame Wentworth gasped, her handkerchief falling to the floor. "Then I am cleared. You believe me innocent." Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Innocent of murder, madame, but not of secrets. Your parcel, your wax-stained glove. These suggest you knew more than you admitted, perhaps of Leclerc's plans. But your alibi holds, and your motive wasn't strong enough for murder." Leclerc lunged for the door, his face a mask of panic, but Japp's constables were faster, seizing him with practiced efficiency. "You're done, Leclerc," Japp said, his voice grim. "Where's the diamond?" Poirot gestured to the safe behind the counter. "Search it, Inspector. Monsieur Leclerc is a man of habit, and he would not trust the star far from his grasp." Japp's men pried open the safe, revealing a small parcel wrapped in brown paper, sealed with red wax bearing Leclerc's initials. Inside, the Star of Mysore gleamed, its facets catching the light like a captured star. Madame Wentworth stifled a cry, and Hastings let out a low whistle. "Good Lord, Poirot, you were right." Leclerc slumped in the constable's grip, his defiance crumbling. I had no choice," he muttered. "Henri was ruining us. Vandermeer offered enough to start over. I didn't mean to kill him. It was a moment's madness. Poirot's expression was stern, but his voice was calm. Madness, monsieur, or calculation? You planned the theft, the disguise, the deception. The magpie was your creation, a shadow to hide your crime. But the truth, like a diamond, cannot be concealed. As the constables led Leclerc away, Japp clapped Poirot on the shoulder. "You've done it again, Poirot. A right tangle, but you cut through it like a knife." Poirot inclined his head, his eyes on the star of Mysore, now returned to its case. "The knife of reason, Inspector, sharpened by the little grey cells. The case is closed, but the heart, that is a puzzle never fully solved." Hastings, watching the diamond's light dance, shook his head. "A devil of a case, Poirot. But how did you know it was Leclerc, not the magpie or Madame Wentworth?" Poirot's smile was faint but triumphant. "The clues, mon ami, told their story. The wax, the seal, the wig, all pointed to Leclerc's hand, too deliberate to be chance. The magpie was a phantom, born of his ambition. And Madame Wentworth, though secretive, lacked the ruthlessness for murder. The truth shone clear once the shadows were dispelled." As they stepped into the street, the city's pulse seemed to quicken, the fog now a distant memory. The star of Mysore, safe at last, was a testament to Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth, a pursuit that would soon draw him to another mystery, another web of human desires. Chapter 12. The Final Reflection. The late afternoon light cast a soft glow through the windows of Henri Dubois' Bond Street shop, where the star of Mysore now rested once more in its velvet-lined case, its facets sparkling with a brilliance that seemed to mock the tragedy it had inspired. The air was still, the scent of rosewood polish mingling with the faint tang of recent turmoil, as if the shop itself exhaled a sigh of relief. Hercule Poirot stood by the counter, his Homburg hat and cane set aside, his green eyes contemplative beneath the neat arches of his brows. His moustache, impeccably groomed, quivered faintly as he gazed at the diamond, its light a silent testament to the unraveling of a dark mystery. Captain Hastings, leaning against a display case, broke the silence, his voice tinged with awe. "By Jove, Poirot, you've done it again. Leclerc behind bars, the diamond recovered. It's a triumph. But I'll confess, I thought the magpie was real until the end. How did you see through it all?" Poirot turned, his expression serene, yet touched with a melancholy that Hastings knew well, a reflection on the frailties of the human heart. "Mon ami," he said, his voice soft but resonant, the star of Mysore was not merely a gem, but a mirror, reflecting the desires of those who beheld it. Greed, ambition, deceit. These are the true thieves, and they leave traces no mask can hide. He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, the shop's polished floor gleaming under his steps. Victor Leclerc was a man consumed by desperation. His business, sinking under debts, needed the star's sail to survive. When Dubois refused, Leclerc's ambition turned to madness. He crafted the magpie, a phantom born of a wig, a key, and a carefully placed parcel to divert suspicion. But his errors were his undoing. The red wax, unique to their trade, linked his office, the warehouse, and the crime. The synthetic hair, meant to suggest a thief, was too perfect, too deliberate, and the key, marked with Dubois's initials, was left in the warehouse to mislead, yet it pointed back to Leclerc's own hand. Hastings nodded, his brow furrowed as he pieced it together. And Madame Wentworth? She had me fooled with her tears and that luncheon alibi. Was she truly innocent, Or did she know more than she said? Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his tone remained grave. Madame Wentworth, Hastings, was a woman of secrets, but not of murder. Her stained glove, her evasive tale of the discarded parcel. These suggest she suspected Leclerc's plan, perhaps from overhearing his quarrels with Dubois. She coveted the star, oui, but her alibi, confirmed by Lady Ashbourne and others, placed her elsewhere. Her silence was born of fear, not guilt. Fear of being entangled in a crime she did not commit. He paused by the case, his gaze fixed on the diamond's radiant heart. The magpie was a fiction, a shadow cast by Leclerc to obscure his crime. The warehouse, with its tools and props, was a stage set for our benefit. But the truth, mon ami, is like this diamond. It cannot be hidden forever. The wax, the seal, the timing. These were the facets that revealed Leclerc's hand. Hastings shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. You make it sound so simple, Poirot. But I was lost in the fog until you pointed the way. That business with the wax. How did you know it wasn't just a coincidence? Poirot's smile was faint, but knowing. Coincidence, Hastings, is the refuge of the lazy mind. The wax was a jeweller's blend, rare and specific, used by Dubois and Leclerc for their parcels. Its presence on the safe, the hair, and the warehouse parcel was no accident. It was Leclerc's signature, left in his haste. The wig, purchased weeks before, showed premeditation. And the key, meant to implicate the magpie, was a misstep, for only someone with access to Dubois' shop could have placed it. He turned to the window, where the last of the day's light painted the street in hues of gold and grey. The human heart, Hastings, is a puzzle far more complex than any crime. Leclerc's ambition blinded him to reason, as Madame Wentworth's desire for beauty clouded her candour. Even the magpie, a myth, was born of human greed, a tale spun to exploit fear. Hercule Poirot sees not only the clues, but the souls they reflect. Hastings, moved by the weight of Poirot's words, straightened. And the star of Mysore? What happens to it now? With Dubois gone, and Leclerc arrested, the shop's future seems bleak. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. The diamond will be sold, I suspect, to settle the shop's debts. Its brilliance will find a new home. But its story, this tale of murder and deceit, will linger. Such is the price of beauty that inspires envy. A knock at the door heralded Inspector Japp, his overcoat slightly askew, his face flushed with the satisfaction of a case closed. Poirot, you old fox, he said, clapping his hands together. Leclerc's confessed. Spilled the whole thing. Said he snapped when Dubois laughed at his pleas to sell the diamond. Planned to frame the magpie, just as you said. The star was meant for Vandermeer, but Leclerc hadn't sent it yet. Kept it in his safe, hoping to negotiate later. Poirot inclined his head, his demeanour unruffled. Bon, Inspector. The truth is always simpler when the shadows are cleared. And this Vandermeer, has he been found? Japp shrugged. Still chasing that lead? Kessler, the broker, says he's a recluse, hard to pin down. But with the diamond back, he's less of a concern. You've done us proud, Poirot. Poirot's eyes twinkled. The pride, Inspector, belongs to reason. Now, if you will, excuse us. Hastings and I have earned a moment of repose. As they stepped into the street, the city's pulse seemed to slow, the last vestiges of fog dissolving into the dusk. Poirot adjusted his scarf, his gaze lifting to the horizon. Come, Hastings, he said. his voice light but resolute. "London is a city of mysteries, and though one is solved, others await. The little grey cells, they never rest." Hastings, smiling, fell into step beside him. "Nor do you, Poirot. Nor do you." The star of Mysore, safe behind its glass, gleamed as they passed, a silent witness to the triumph of truth over deception. Poirot's mind, as sharp as the diamond's facets, was already turning to the next challenge, the next web of human desires waiting to be unraveled.